One of the other great things that has occurred about 3 weeks ago, the Department of Homeland Security designated landscape architecture as a STEM profession, which is a big feat because it's grown so much that the notion of integrating science and the scientific method into design decision making has made its way in landscape architecture, has made its way up to the government. So we're no longer thought of as, hey, let's come make my backyard look pretty. We do much broader and more complex things.
Welcome to FutureBuilt. I'm Chelsea Reber, and today we are joined by Dr. Galen Newman. He's a department head of landscape architecture and urban planning at Texas A&M University. Now, first, I want to tell you something. This year, we're preparing a capital campaign to celebrate 100 years of landscape architecture at Texas A&M in 2026. Click the link in the description to learn more about the anniversary, and make sure to stick around to the end of the episode to learn how you can enter to win an iPad. Dr. Newman, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Chelsea.
So tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in the School of Architecture.
Sure. I'll give you the brief version. It's an epic saga of how I ended up here. But I grew up right outside of Auburn, Alabama, which is where I went to college and I got a master's of landscape architecture and a master's of community planning there. So both of my degrees kind of fit into what the department is. I went to Clemson University after that and got my PhD in what's the degree program now is called Planning, Design, and the Built Environment. When I first started, it was called Environmental Design and Planning. They just changed the name, but basically it integrates both degrees, both master's degrees that I had. I worked at Clemson for a year after I graduated as a visiting assistant professor, and actually be 12 years on August 1st that I got a job at Texas A&M after that year at Clemson working. Would have been here 12 years. I started as an assistant professor here 12 years ago, became associate professor with tenure. Now I'm full professor and department head. And I've done a series of other administrative jobs along the way, pretty much every administrative job you could do at different levels. It's been my pleasure. I've learned probably more at A&M than working with these fantastic faculty, fantastic students. I probably learn more from my students when I teach them than they do from me, honestly. But it's been an amazing experience, and I've loved all 12 years here.
Obviously, a job opening will draw you to a school, but was
Sure,
there anything specific that you saw at Texas A&M as you were deciding to come here that really drew you to the school, the university?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I won't throw other universities under the bus, but I did have other offers to go to other places when I took the job here. But there were a few things. I think one is the national reputation of just the planning and landscape architecture programs here at Texas A&M, as far as they're continually highly ranked across the nation nationally. The faculty here are usually, they're just top-notch researchers, and the ones that aren't, researching as much, they're well-renowned personnel in their field of professional practice and those types of things. So the faculty body here and the national prestige of the program is one. And I would say the leader at the time, who was kind of a mentor of mine, Forrester Indabisi, who was the department head at the time that hired me, rest in peace to Forrester, who passed us away a couple of years. A great man. We used to read a lot of his work when I was a student at Auburn and Clemson, and so you're very impressionable when you're coming out of college, and to have the guy that whose readings used to be so influential on me offering me a job was another thing, and I was like, oh my goodness, I get to work with this guy that I had never met but was so influential on me. So a combination of those factors. I couldn't turn down the job here, and I've been here ever since. Yeah.
What are some key differences between landscape architecture and urban planning?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'll say we get that question a lot because there's a significant overlap in the two professions, and there's overlaps with architecture, construction science as well. Any kind of what we call the fields of architecture, they overlap, more or less to some degree. some to a larger degree, some to a smaller degree, but urban planning and landscape architecture in particular do that. We like to look at it like two sides of the brain. So the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain, right? The right side of the brain is more creativity and those and aesthetics and beauty, and the left side of the brain is more analytics and those types of things. So on the right side of the brain is more, we would say, landscape architecture. So it's creative, it's aesthetics, it's beauty, but it's also ecology, it's visualization of data, information, those types of things. The left side of the brain is more analytics. The planning side of the brain is what we call it. So that's where you also do, policy, economics, those types of things. You work at a larger scale, regional, city scale on landscape architecture. You're doing more site and urban scale, those types of things. And in the middle is what we kind of refer to as urban design. And architects can actually play, also be urban designers too. So it's kind of blending a lot of the professions together. But on the urban planning side, we kind of have 6-degree programs in our department. But between planning and landscape architecture on the urban planning side, the undergraduate in urban planning actually has 2 different tracks. So one of them is much more left side of the brain, policy-minded. It's a policy track for urban design. And we also have an urban design track, which is very closely linked to landscape architecture. And they take a lot of classes with the landscape architect students. So
I was going to say, it sounds like the students really get a nice overview of everything.
Yes. We're highly interdisciplinary, right? So the students work together a lot. They take a lot of shared classes across the different 6-degree programs. And we call it 6-degree programs in 3 disciplines. So the disciplines are planning, landscape architecture, and we also have a land and property development master's program. So we're planning the sites, we're designing them, and we're building them all in one area. But yeah, they work together a lot on different projects. So because when they get in the real world, that's how it plays out. You have to work with all these other disciplines, and so you learn those skills of the pluses and minuses and not getting your full way, and you have to give and take to the client, give and take to the other disciplines, and figuring out how to meet in the middle to achieve a common goal. So yes, that's a very good point.
Exciting news. Landscape architecture is coming up on a 100-year anniversary. Can you tell us what that means to the program, and then what is also being planned right now for that anniversary?
Yeah, so we're super excited about this anniversary. We're one of the oldest landscape architecture programs in the nation. From our calculations, I think we're in one of the first 25 landscape architecture programs in the nation. So to have a legacy that has remained this long, I think is a testament to itself. And we've only grown. We've only gotten larger. We're definitely one of the largest landscape architecture programs as far as amount of students, and we're growing every year in enrollment, which is also rare in our program, which is good for the world because the demand for landscape architects is increasing. And so one of the other great things that has occurred about three weeks ago, the Department of Homeland Security designated landscape architecture as a STEM profession, which is a big feat. So because it's grown so much that the notion of integrating science and the scientific method into design decision making has made its way in landscape architecture, has made its way up to the government. So we're no longer thought of as, hey, let's come make my backyard look pretty. We do much broader and more complex things. So
I'm sure you guys have some pretty exciting things planned for the anniversary.
we do. We're working on planning them right now. I can't get into the details of what's being planned, but there's going to be a series of very exciting events and campaigns that will be unfolding in the next couple of months. So stay tuned, and we will hit everyone with those that's interested.
Are you ready to take your career to the next level? Apply for our graduate programs at arch.tamu.edu. Dr. Newman, what distinguishes landscape architecture and urban planning from other similar programs?
Sure. I'll say, probably 3 things. The first one I've already mentioned, that we have a department that plans, designs, and builds, right? We have 3 disciplines in one department that entails the entire process of the built and natural environments and how they get created and how people interact with them, right? Which is very rare. I think, at any universities. I think second, we are renowned for this in our department across all of our disciplines, is our evidence-based approach to design, to landscape architecture, to planning, and to development. When I say that, I mean that it's research-driven. So we're in the 98.5 percentile of researchers in our respective disciplines, compared to 124 peer universities, which is pretty amazing. We're in the top 3 in grants received. We're in the top 3 in number of articles, and we're in the top 3 in citations of our publications from our faculty. So students, when they come here, they get to be involved in a significant amount of nationally, externally funded projects that are working on some really big level things with multiple disciplines. And we're integrating those research projects into the classroom, into the design studios, into the planning studios. So that's a huge difference as well, that we have this evidence-based approach. And I think thirdly is that we're very engagement driven. So we take that science and we disseminate that to community members. So we work, when you come here, you'll work on real projects for real people and develop real solutions and outcomes to community issues. And you'll work with community members to public participation meetings and community engagement processes, those types of things. We have different units like Texas Target Communities, which is kind of a national leader and definitely a state leader in community engagement. And conducting projects with communities. But you're normally always going to have a client, and you'll be presenting to those clients. You'll be going to those communities, doing field visits and gleaning information back. And so you learn about feedback loops with clients. And okay, here's a product. What do you think of this? And they rip your work apart, and you have to redo it over until you get to something that's a compromise between everyone. So, I would say those 3 things are what distinguish us, what we're nationally renowned for, and what makes our students great and capable and very good at what they do once they get out.
Your students are getting real world experience before they even cross the stage, which is incredible.
Absolutely. And we kind of expound upon that as well. We actually have the entire School of Architecture has a semester away requirement as well on top of that. So while you're in the curriculum, you're working with real projects. But the semester away has 2 options within it. So you basically have to spend a semester outside of A&M, and you get school credit for it. So that you either go study abroad and you spend, a semester in Europe in one of our 3 locations, or you can do an internship. And so that's, we probably have around 50% that do each. But all of our programs have professional advisory boards and councils attached to them, and most of our former students that are in the professional world now, they give back to our students by hiring them as interns. So they already have a significant amount of real world experience by the time they graduate.
You mentioned real world experiences that your students get to participate in while they're here. Can you give me a couple of examples of those experiences?
So I'll give you a couple of examples that I've worked on with students, and these types of projects, almost all of our faculty are working on these simultaneously. But we do a lot of work with under-resourced communities that maybe don't have the means to assist themselves and help fix some of the issues going on in their communities. So two communities, one community and one city that we worked in are Manchester, which is in Houston, Texas, and Galena Park, which is its own city, but it's adjacent to Houston, about the size of Houston super neighborhood. And most of our projects are in Texas. We do work internationally, though. I've worked in Ohio. We've done projects in Africa. It would just depend on, how much funding we have behind it and who we're working with, who our partners are. But we do a lot of master plans for communities. I think that's kind of our claim to fame, master plans or comprehensive plans. Yeah, so there's a lot of communities that can't afford professional master planning, and so they work through Texas A&M, and we're able to provide those services at a much reduced cost, most of the time free if we have funding from external grants. And so as a result of some of these outputs we've created through participatory engagement, we work through local organizations to connect us to communities. community residents, community stakeholders, and do a series of kind of sessions with these communities, presenting what we found, and they say, no, that's not what's going on. Here's what's going on, and we'll give them different design scenarios, and they'll kind of cut those up and say, hey, we like this, but we don't like this, or that's going to affect my property like this. Don't do it like this. So we do a lot of scenarios, and then we condense those scenarios into one final plan. So as a result of these kind of back and forth with communities, the products that we give them have had pretty strong impact. And there's different policy change impacts and stuff that we've had. I'll mention Manchester and Galena Park because they've both received major funding to help implement a lot of the stuff that we kind of suggest for them. So Manchester won a $10 million XQ grant around 5 years ago. And just last year, Galena Park won a $3 million grant to help improve its infrastructure conditions based on a lot of the work that we created.
What is a typical career path for a student that graduates from your department?
So our field is quite broad. Because we have development, landscape architecture, and planning in one department, there's a significant amount of routes that graduates can take. So I would say urban planners, in urban planning, I'll answer this and I'll exclude kind of graduate school and academia, right? We'll stick with professional type career paths and those types of things. But obviously, academia is an option. You're looking at an example of that. And all of our faculty are examples of that. But so, urban planning, you can go into fields like economic development, city management, natural systems planning, food systems planning, land use arrangement, or land use planning, or transportation planning, right? There's a lot of fields and specialization in planning. Landscape architecture, you can go work for a firm that does people's backyards, which is our stereotype, I think. But we're much, much broader than that. You can do park systems. You can do park design. You can do urban design. You can do historic preservation. You can do restoration project. You can design entire campuses, streetscapes, all type. You can do low impact development, which is more of stormwater management based things. You can lay out parking lots and drainage systems for parking lots. So it's much broader than you think. You have to know site engineering and site construction, as well as the typical things that people think of when they think of landscape architecture. And development is almost bundling all of those things to get the thing built. So you procure the property. You work with the existing planning policies. Do you need a zoning variance? Does it fit right? You do return on investments or return on investment analytics, site analytics to determine if this is actually the right site to put it in, those types of things, run the financials, and then you get the thing built. So it's an entire kind of process. So a lot of career options involved in these programs. And we're here to help you figure out, which specialization you might be most interested in by the time you get out of here.
Have you ever had a student come back and say, hey, I got a job doing this? And you're like, what? I didn't even know that existed. Because it sounds like there are so many different options. And I'm sure there are new ones being developed every day.
Yeah, for sure. We get a lot of those. I mean, sometimes you get the skills you can learn here because we do a lot of presentations to clients, right? So we'll get students that come back and say, now they're just the runner for doing presentations for a marketing firm or something, right? Or you get so good at graphics, right? You get so good at graphic skills in Photoshop and different software. You get good at workflows between softwares because you'll learn AutoCAD, you'll learn Adobe products, Photoshop, Illustrator, you'll learn rendering software programs. You'll learn ArcGIS, so mapping softwares. There's a lot of different programs you learn, and you learn how to take data in and out of those programs and transfer it. So we have people that they only do marketing plans for different, or they do graphic work for companies to try to sell their products a little better, or they're putting together booklets. So it's interesting to hear the people that of the skills they get really great at, right? And if they don't end up wanting to even go in the profession, all the different avenues you can still take on.
You still gain a lot of skills in the
That's
department.
exactly right. Yeah. So of those that go into the profession, they're all having a pretty strong impact. I mean, Aggies are in a lot of places. I'll say we have a lot of graduates, and they do a lot of great things. And the cool thing about our professions, I'll say professions of all three disciplines, is that we have such a strong impact on how and what and where people interact with the world. I mean, we're building places and building parks and planning out how land uses should go, developing policies that save natural systems, those types of things. So if, let's say, you have a lot of vacant lots, right, in your neighborhood, and so our profession would be, or our disciplines would work together to regenerate those vacant lots, and now you get some new shopping center with mixed use and residential, and there's a nice park in the middle of it, right? We've totally changed that entire space from probably something that may turn into some squalid area to a new space that is bringing people in. People are socializing, right? That's pretty powerful. We plan out the way you drive your route to work. A planner did that, right? So you might not.
So I have somebody to complain to? Okay, that's what you're telling me.
I didn't do it.
I need to go write some letters. No, just kidding.
Yeah, but so that's what I mean. But we've had, so I think the places we make, I say that to set this up. I think the places that we create are our major impact, right? It's not necessarily always, the people's name you remember, but you do remember the places. So, for example, one of our land and property development graduates named George Mitchell, he was instrumental in building the Woodlands in Houston, Texas, right? I think a lot of people know that, but a lot of people don't. And there was many more Aggies behind why that was built as well. Lauren Griffith is one of our landscape architecture graduates. She did Discovery Green, the park in Houston, Texas, which I think tens of thousands of people interact with every year. And then from the planning side, this is one of our older graduates, but Wayne Oliver, he designated an entire stretch of 191-mile stretch of the Rio Grande into a scenic river analysis, major recreational kind of place for people to interact with the river and help with public health consequences, right? People are out and active and those types of things. So the places we create, I think, are the most important impact that we have.
Can you talk about the research that's being done in the department right now and how that feeds back into the programs for the students?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, obviously, we are renowned for our research capabilities here, especially in LAUP. LAUP leads the School of Architecture, despite being, I would say, the smallest department as far as number of students and number of faculty. We lead the School of Architecture in research grant money brought in, which is pretty commendable. It shows how amazing our faculty are. That feeds back into the students, I think, in multiple ways. I think one, we are able to fund a lot of students to come to school here, right? So you can come to school and work on these amazing research projects and come to school for free, right? You're being paid to come to school and being part of some of these major undertakings that we're working on. I mean, a lot of these are external grants, external national organization grants. We get a lot of National Science Foundation grants, a lot of National Institutes of Health grants. Those are our kind of two major cogs, but multiple other agencies that we're getting grants from. I know, off the top of my head, we're on a $13 million National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences grant. We just yesterday received word we were winning a $3 million National Institutes of Health grant. Last year, we won a $17 million Department of Energy grant. And that's just three examples, right? We have way more than that aren't in the laundry list in my head. So yeah, one, I think, is the ability to fund students, and two, I think the capabilities of being involved in some of these kind of new research undertakings that we're taking. And I think third, as a part of that, we're able to the resources created by that funding allow us to have so much cutting edge technology that other schools may not be able to have right at this point. So we don't only have access to what everyone else does, but we're creating and getting access to new stuff because we're testing things before it even comes out. So I think you're not only on par with what the market demands as a student, you're much in front of it by the time you get out.
How is the department using endowment money to help students who might be coming into the program?
Yeah, thanks. So endowment money is probably is by far the best money because it gives back every year, right? So every year that endowment is there forever, even when I pass, when others, you come and go, right? In our landscape architecture and urban planning programs, comparatively speaking to our peers, we have more endowments than they would. Aggies are great at giving back, and Aggies support Aggies, and we can't thank them enough for what they've done. But our enrollment continues to grow year by year, and so every year that our enrollment grows, we need more endowments, endowed scholarships to help support these students, and that's how we keep the fresh and brightest students coming into Texas A&M to help us with a lot of these research projects. We need the best, and you're not going to get the best unless you're offering them money to come, right? That's the bottom line. And so, the more we can get, the more we can support the students. I mean, I think that's one of that's one of Texas A&M's claims of fame is that Aggies support Aggies, and I've never seen anything like how great the former students are to our current students. And it just, it warms my heart how appreciative that students are to Texas A&M, former students are to Texas A&M.
Dr. Newman, what makes LAUP unique, and why should prospective students decide to come here and come to your department?
That's a great question. I think the bottom line is when you graduate from LAUP, you're going to be the best version of yourself. We the faculty, the students here, I think we're unique in academia in that we are almost like a close-knit little family. Our faculty get along and work very well together. Our students are like our nieces and nephews by the time they graduate. You're very close because people don't understand studio environment, I don't think. We don't have a culture where all of our classes are, okay, you come in, we lecture, you take a test on it in 2 weeks. Although you do have some of those classes. Studio culture, you have a class 3 days a week, and it's normally from around 1 o'clock to 4:30 or something like that. So Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, that's our typical studio. You sit in class the whole time with your professors, working on a project. You do an output, they critique the output, you go back and redo it, and that happens over and over and over, and those types of things. So you get very close with your studio mates. You get very close with your professors, and it's amazing to see from a freshman or from a first-year graduate student to when they graduate, how they blossom into what they where they want to go in life and what things they want to be best at. So when you come here and leave, we expect you to be a leader who positively impacts their communities and makes the world a better place.
Dr. Newman, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Make sure to follow the school at TAMU Arch School to stay up to date with everything that's going on. And you can also stay up to date with the Department of Landscape Architecture and Urban Planning on Facebook and Instagram at TAMU LAUP.